So much for accommodating me. My name is Cam Scott. I hope everyone is managing to keep safe and that those around you are in good health in this strange time. I've spoken to this board before on behalf of Police Free Schools Winnipeg, but I'm here today as a concerned citizen as well. That concern extends in two directions: toward the active role and behavior of the Winnipeg Police Service in communities throughout the city, but also to the ongoing and deepening depletion of funds for essential services in Winnipeg while the police budget only grows. This dynamic of overfunded security forces and underfunded communities is too typical. It's the sort of thing that Police Free Schools Winnipeg has been talking about for some months, with reference to the unwarranted presence of police throughout schools, where Winnipeg School Division, for example, spends $500,000 almost on 9 school resource officers while scrambling for substitute teachers, remote learning resources, and protective equipment in a pandemic. Schools cut back on nurses, a necessity for health, whilst investing in the appearance of safety. This is to say nothing of the negative impacts of police presence on racialized, newcomer, low-income, disabled students, but you've heard me out on this topic before. I'm not here to speak to schools, only to say that our campaign commenced from the acute reality and firsthand experience of funding shortfalls in classrooms, while police budget and presence expand with enthusiastic approval from City Council. So the City of Winnipeg's preliminary 2021 budget boasts record investments in police, increasing the police budget by 2% annually from $294.5 million to $312.4 million by 2023. This transpires against the backdrop of record engagement from constituents, half of which rank the police as low priority. Now, we in the Q&A, we're debating the meaning of these numbers. So I won't dwell, but I'll say that I find this unsurprising given the state of our city. Police presence feels ubiquitous in a downtown increasingly characterized by displacement. This presence is aerialized in the form of a helicopter that costs thousands of dollars per flight. I don't know a working person in the West End of Winnipeg who hasn't complained about the impact of this costly surveillance on their sleep and health. This police presence is militarized in the form of a $350,000 armored vehicle that you'll recall was purchased without oversight or authorization from the police board, whose members at the time were notified only after the fact. So the benefits of police bloating and overreach aren't clear, but the drawbacks are manifestly so. This budget increase comes in a year of mass resistance to killings and profiling by the police. This wasn't only in response to the killing of George Floyd in the United States, but the reality on the ground here earlier this year. And it is germane. The Winnipeg Police Service killed 4 people in the span of March and April. So I'll echo other of today's speakers in insisting that what the police actually do should be at the center of this budget conversation. And we can't sidestep this matter of fact. It was for this reason in June that thousands of Winnipeggers marched peacefully to demand change. None of that concern seems to have registered with City Council. We were told, however dismissively, that we've been heard, yet this budget suggests the very opposite. In June, responding to the Justice for Black Lives demonstrations, Chief Danny Smythe said that it's a little bit too early to just say defund the police and forward that all to social services. If you were to just rip a large segment of the budget all at once, then I think you would be putting our environment into a more volatile place than it is now. Naturally, I disagree. If you'll allow an anecdotal digression, I've heard firsthand from officers that they had eerily little to do through the months in which CERB was distributed without condition. Improvements in quality of life directly remedy the causes of crime. This is a fairly uncontroversial claim, so I can't understand resistance to the suggestion that budgets like the one before you perpetuate a vicious cycle where poverty is prosecuted at great social cost rather than directly and lastingly remedied. This is a question of vision that exceeds perhaps the mandate of the police board, but I encourage you to think holistically with respect to the very problems that policing purports to address. This is also to say nothing of the prejudicial practices of police, where the majority of those killed and incarcerated in Manitoba are Indigenous, on Indigenous land. And we have to consider community demands for real substantive racial justice and what the police actually do in any budgetary discussion, or this conversation remains hopelessly, even evasively abstract. So this preliminary budget does considerably worse than nothing in responding to the most pressing concerns of Winnipeggers. Smythe says it's a bit too early to just say defund the police and forward that to social services. But this budget does the flagrant opposite. It proposes to refund the police in a moment where their role is under examination and truthfully fails by that closer scrutiny. I'm here to speak constructively, but not without anger and disappointment. Winnipeggers were clearly heard throughout the months leading up to this budget, on the streets, as well as in the survey that's been contested today. You know, Councillor Mays talks about unpublished appendices regarding respondents in order to dismiss certain surveys as statistically invalid. Mays notes that the police board is here to hear both sides, those who want defunding and those who want more funding. But as others have already said today, this isn't the sort of debate that you can just average out on the order of several $million. We need experts, having heard from one today, and we need vision. I don't want to treat this budget as a matter of consumer satisfaction. As Dr. Dobchuk Lamb said earlier this morning, budgets are a matter of life and death. In Winnipeg, where conservatively 1,500 people are living on the street at this moment, and many more are precariously housed, the city has more or less absolved itself of responsibility for public housing solutions, employing only one staff who might count toward a real housing division. It's recommended that a city have one housing division staff for every 100,000 people. As a city, we're drastically underfunding the necessary institutions for healthy living, and we're policing the impacts of this shortfall in the meanwhile. So this is just to say that I'd like to echo emphatically the demands of the other speakers and to ask that the police board recommend against this increase as a sincere gesture of engagement with the communities to which you are accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Cam Scott, for your presentation this morning. Thank you very much for choosing your words that are in keeping with our decorum. Very much appreciated. Are there any questions at all? I just want to just go back to the comment you made about 1,500 unsheltered Winnipeggers at any given night, and certainly you're correct in that statement. But are you aware that recently, and I want to thank our federal government for providing $12.4 million towards housing initiatives here in the city to address homelessness of those 1,500 unsheltered Winnipeggers on any given night?
Yes, I have done quite a bit of research into housing in Canada, into the rapid housing initiative and the money that it has injected via the End Homelessness Winnipeg and the Reaching Home program and so on. And I think that is not yet enough to remedy the scale of the problem, and because it is germane to the budget overall, and I think it would be a meaningful counterbalance to over-policing. I don't think it's beside the point of what we're talking about today to say that I do wish that City Council would take some of those housing solutions in hand.
Thank you. And just with regards to, and I know that you previously spoken delegation earlier this summer with respect to school resource officers, and you brought it up here a little bit today, but it's the schools and the school divisions that are making those decisions, and funding is provided by the provincial government in that respect as well. You're aware of that, correct?
Certainly, as I said earlier, I didn't come to speak to schools so much as I drew upon that background to talk about what I see as a society-wide tendency towards security solutions rather than more holistic and health-based solutions.
Thank you very much again for your presentation. I think Councillor Mays has a follow-up question.
Not so much question. I think you're right that if there are appendices, if we're going to publish something in the budget saying it's a survey, we owe it to the public to also say who responded, where, what age groups, that sort of breakdown. I'm not sure if the appendices are technically published or not. We as councillors were given them. You're right on that. I think if we're going to put these results out and then have councillors like me call them into question saying, well, it's not statistically significant, we should be publicizing the appendices. We should be saying who we're asking. I'll come back to this theme. I think we're at EPC tomorrow. I suspect we'll probably touch on this again tomorrow. So on that, I agree with you completely that we need to do a better job on that.
Great. I'll be listening tomorrow too, so I look forward to that conversation.
Again, Cam Scott, thank you for your presentation.